patrzcie sobie. Dużo nie mogę, bo tutaj też groźby. Jestem na Lubieszynie. Lubieszyn, przejście graniczne. Tutaj gestapo z SS podrzucają inżynierów.
More videos are coming out, documenting the transfer of illegal immigrants from Germany to Poland. Polish authorities are not responding, but the Polish people are. They have had enough and are protesting more and more strongly against illegal immigration.
Tak, w szczególności obserwujemy kraje zachodnie, no i jest to niepokojące, co tam się dzieje.
Czy w krajach skandynawskich, czy we Francji, wszyscy mówią, jest dramat. Jest dramat, te kraje już nie przypominają tych krajów, którymi były przed zalewem imigrantów.
That is why the residents of Skierniewice do not want a foreigner integration center built in their city.
Nie robimy polityki.
We are not politicians, we don't do politics. We are simply doing this as residents, because we live here. If we don't take care of this, no one else will take care of it for us. The mayor assures that no such center will be built in Skierniewice, but not everyone believes him, especially after it turned out that 2 illegal immigrants, claiming to be minors, were sheltered in a local orphanage.
Chciałbym też, proszę Państwa, żebyście...
I would not like you to make us, the local government, a scapegoat, because in reality, we are not the ones inviting illegal foreigners to Skierniewice. We are only enforcing the law, because no one, including the director, wants to face criminal charges or disciplinary proceedings for not accepting such a person. The problem is that the victims in this case are not officials, but children in orphanages.
To już widać właśnie u nas.
Recently, 2 migrants were placed in an orphanage. Why in an orphanage and not in another facility? Because it was determined, perhaps based on interviews with them, that they were under 18 years of age. How old are they really? No one really knows, because it seems that they have already managed to escape from this center. That is why opposition councillors oppose the construction of foreigner integration centers.
Nie ma się co dziwić mieszkańcom.
It is no surprise that residents are simply afraid, because it has been proven, both statistically and scientifically, that mass immigration is associated with an increase in crime, theft, rape, and robbery, which is why we, as law and justice counselors, must firmly say no. Examples of violence by migrants are abound. Take Kościerzyn, where a 27-year-old Colombian man was detained by citizens after he allegedly rode up to a local resident on his bike and snatched her wallet. In Toruń, public outrage boiled over after a brutal attack by an illegal immigrant, which left a young Polish woman in critical condition. And here, a similar protest in Radom.
Ja pamiętam, jak tutaj w Gubinie
I remember how a few months ago, here in Gubin, we organized one of the first protests, and some people were shaking their heads. Today, it turns out, all of Poland is talking about this. The presidential campaign also largely revolved around this issue, and I think this shows that a well-organized nation is able to defend itself. Problems with the integrity of Poland's borders have been festering ever since the Civic Coalition, led by Donald Tusk, took power in late 2023. It intensified rapidly after the presidential election, which saw Tusk's candidate for president defeated. Since June 1st, since the end of the elections, we have had a mass invasion. This applies to both the border with Belarus and the border with Germany. German authorities are bringing unwanted migrants from Afghanistan, Pakistan, Somalia, and other countries to Poland in large numbers.
Excuse me, do you speak English? Do you speak English? What are you doing here? You are from Somalia.
Nasz rząd nie potrafi się Niemcom
Our
postawić.
government is unwilling to stand up to Germany, and these people are being sent back to Poland. Regretfully, they are often in poor health. An example from a few days ago, Germany sent a man who had a broken leg. They sent us a man with a broken leg and no medical supplies. However, protests by Poles and warnings about the consequences of mass immigration failed to make an impression on the government, which often forces local governments to accept immigrants through financial blackmail. As an example, after councillors in Kożuchów passed a resolution against the forced relocation of illegal immigrants, they were denied money to subsidize the education of children. According to the evaluator, the submitted application cannot be accepted for implementation due to the fact that discriminatory measures have been taken in the municipality of Kożuchów. Resolution number 19/99/25 of the Kożuchów City Council on preventing the creation of centers for illegal immigrants in the municipality of Kożuchów, in the opinion of the evaluator, violates Article 9, Section 3 of the Regulation isolation of the European Parliament and of the Council. Therefore, the opposition is demanding the resignation of Minister of Internal Affairs and Administration Tomasz Siemoniak.
Zdecydowanie miarka już się przebrała.
Things have gone too far. This is not a situation that we have been observing since yesterday, last week, or last month. This situation has been going on for about a year. The EU Migration Pact will come into force in the middle of next year. Tens, and perhaps even hundreds of thousands of illegal immigrants from Africa and the Middle East will then begin to arrive in Poland as part of forced relocation every year, if not stopped. For the first time since the Israel-Iran ceasefire was announced, Iran's supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei addressed his nation. Rumors had spread that he had been killed in Israeli airstrikes prior to the ceasefire. Khamenei heated up the already tense post-war atmosphere in the Middle East. Contrary to the claims of the Iranian government, not to mention Israel and the United States, he announced that the attacks on nuclear infrastructure had not caused significant damage, and that Tehran was returning to work on its nuclear program. The US president greatly exaggerated what had happened. It became clear that he needed this exaggeration. Everyone who heard these words understood that beneath the surface of these remarks lay another, deeper truth. They could do nothing. They could not achieve their intended goal. Iranian propaganda cannot afford to show any weakness. This is an extremely dangerous moment in the history of the regime. Admitting defeat would be a death sentence for the country's leaders, which is why the 12-day war is presented by Tehran as a great victory for Iran. The Islamic Republic has dealt America a heavy blow. It attacked one of the key American bases in the region, the Al Udeid Air Base, and caused damage. The same people who exaggerated in the previous case tried to downplay this one, saying that nothing had happened. As for Al Udeid Air Base, the fact is that no missiles reached their target. All missiles flying over Qatar were shot down by air defense systems. As for the effects of the bombing, the matter is more complicated because they are simply not visible in satellite images, which leaves room open for speculation. Just 24 hours after the end of the US mission in Iran, the media in the United States, those hostile to Trump, began to spread information about an alleged preliminary Pentagon report, which allegedly said that the bombing had not caused any serious damage. This infuriated President Trump, who, during a NATO summit in The Hague, confronted one of the journalists, accusing her of publishing incomplete and distorted information.
I would say issue the report when you know what happened. I wouldn't say that it could be severe or maybe not. They use the word severe. It could be severe or maybe it's not. So people like you picked up and said, oh, it's not severe.
We're just
no,
looking for the
the report was not a complete report. Yeah, the message was probably wait till you know the answer before you go ahead.
The Pentagon and the White House accused journalists of spreading false rumors for political reasons. All the more so because this narrative was immediately picked up by the United States' adversaries in the Middle East.
They don't care what the troops think. They don't care what the world thinks. They want to spin it to try to make him look bad based on a leak. Of course, we've all seen plenty of leakers. And what do leakers do? They have agendas. And what do? Do they share the whole information or just the part that they want to introduce?
According to the Pentagon, the preliminary report was based on visual data, which cannot be properly confirmed.
Unlike a normal surface bomb, you won't see an impact crater because they're designed to deeply bury and then function. I know there's been a lot of questions about that. All 6 weapons at each vent at Fordo went exactly where they were intended to go.
The only thing visible in the satellite images are the bomb entry holes.
All of the evidence of what was just bombed by 12 30,000-pound bombs is buried under a mountain, devastated and obliterated. So if you want to make an assessment of what happened at Fordo, you better get a big shovel and go really deep, because Iran's nuclear program.
The problem, however, is that the ceasefire, which is brought about through pressure from the USA, does not seem to be particularly stable. Both Tel Aviv and Tehran feel they have unfinished business. All our fighters are ready, fingers on the trigger. If the enemy makes a mistake, it will face a strong and decisive response, just as it had for the past 12 days. When it comes to defending this country, we do not hesitate for a moment. Israel knows that its defensive capabilities are much weaker today than they were 2 weeks ago. According to internal reports, the missile defense system is not effective enough against ballistic missiles. This means that Israel will take direct threats from Tehran much more seriously. The US president, on the other hand, has already announced that if Iran resumes its nuclear program, the United States will simply bomb it again.
LOT is a Polish company with nearly 100 years of tradition.
Crew, be ready for departure.
In recent years, it has been one of the most punctual carriers, performing well financially. But now it will suffer. Maintaining the status quo is simply not an option. Compensation for passengers is one of the ways to discipline airlines in terms of punctuality. And the council, chaired by Infrastructure Minister Dariusz Klimczak, has changed the regulations in such a way that it has reduced compensation and increased the delay threshold. What is happening today in the European Union is an action to directly weaken our carrier. According to the newly adopted regulations, passengers will be able to claim not higher as announced, but lower compensation for delays. And as a result, more money will stay with the tardy carriers. How did the Polish minister explain this?
3,500 kilometrów.
We want to protect passengers, but give airlines room to grow. But under these conditions, those who are not punctual will receive up to 20 times more than those carriers who are on time. We are talking about hundreds of millions of euros a year. In addition, our Polish LOT, which has been among the leaders in punctuality for years, will suffer in terms of competitiveness. And we must remember that the national carrier is always an important part of the economy. It's simply good business, and all countries strive to have well-developed air transport. However, business must be taken care of. But according to the golden thoughts of the head of the Polish government, this is not always the case. It is time to finally put an end to the doctrine that LOT is a company that must be saved at all costs, regardless of the realities, just because it is called LOT and has a beautiful tradition. That is why the opposition warns that the regulations adopted by the Council of the European Union could be the first step towards a financial slump and a worst-case scenario, because it seems that Minister Klimczak read everything from a piece of paper during the meeting and at the press conference. Perhaps he was thinking about something completely unrelated. We are already thinking about winter. My goal is to create a train connection to Italy and Austria, but I know that this is very difficult. And so Poland's presidency of the EU is slowly coming to an end. Unfortunately, the opposition emphasizes no project of any significance the European Union has been carried out, let alone one that would address Polish issues. Now Denmark will take over. And just like that, Donald Tusk's term in office is passing by. History is being written before our very eyes. The four-person crew of the Axiom 4 mission, including Polish astronaut Sławosz Uznański-Wiśniewski, has boarded the International Space Station. The astronauts will spend at least 2 weeks there. During this time, Sławosz Uznański-Wiśniewski will conduct 13 experiments, including tests of innovative solutions from Poland. Among them are technologies that can improve robotics, rover control, and communication for people with disabilities. 27,000 kilometers per hour. That was the speed at which the Dragon capsule and the International Space Station were traveling during the docking procedure. Everything went smoothly. After 2 hours of preparation, the 4 astronauts were officially welcomed.
We're happy to be here. It's so great to be here.
This is how the dreams of Sławosz Uznański-Wiśniewski, among others, came true.
Thank you all for such a warm welcome to the International Space Station. Expedition 73. We will all try to do the best, representing our countries. I represent Poland.
The astronauts will spend at least 2 weeks here. They will be involved in scientific experiments and educational projects. I am representing all of you. We are flying to the International Space Station to conduct our technological experiments and showcase our technology. At the same time, we are preparing Poland's technological future. As part of the Polish Ignis technological and scientific mission, Sławosz Uznański-Wiśniewski will conduct 13 experiments. One of them is to show whether genetically modified organisms can provide food for astronauts. Tardigrades are probably the only organisms that live on Earth and are able to survive the very harsh conditions of space, where the temperature drops to minus 273 degrees. There is no air, there is radiation, and they were able to survive and return to Earth. Genes were taken from them, yeast was modified, and this yeast will be studied on the ISS. Our astronaut will not be eating such food yet, so he has taken specially prepared pierogi with him. He will be able to eat them before the next experiments. Some of them are very innovative. There will also be an experiment to test how brainwaves can be used to control devices. It is possible that this experiment will allow us to function much better and more efficiently in space. The journey to the space station alone made a huge impression on the astronauts. It's an amazing feeling, an amazing journey, and then suddenly nothing. Everything goes quiet and you just float in the air, unbuckle your seatbelt, and just float in silence. We tried to prepare for those minutes and seconds for a long time, including training jet fighter pilots, but launching a rocket is a completely different matter. The participation of a Polish astronaut in the Ignis mission costs Poland 65 million euros. The decision was actually made in 2023. That was when the decision was made to increase the contribution to the European Space Agency. Minister Buda personally made this decision. Interestingly, there were some critical voices at the time. Gazeta Wyborcza wrote that sending a Pole into space was reminiscent of the Polish People's Republic. Now, it couldn't wait for the mission to start. At the time, the sense of spending money on this mission was questioned. There were editorial offices and politicians who deleted their posts. They asked whether it made sense to spend money on a propaganda project. This is a scientific project that promotes development for the whole of Poland and above divisions, as these words confirm. Greetings to all of you. I represent all of you, 40 million Poles. It might be a small step for man, but a big step for Poland.
From launch to docking, it has been an absolute pleasure.